Welcome back. Even though it's been 8 months since Donald Trump lost his bid for re-election, his power over the Republican Party doesn't seem to be waning and, in fact, may even be getting stronger. For many Republicans, the 2022 midterm elections are turning into a Trump loyalty test. In what is normally a highly unusual move, incumbent Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska just lost the support of her own state's Republican Party. GOP leaders there endorsed Murkowski's pro-Trump primary challenger. And Murkowski isn't alone. Senator James Lankford faces a similar situation in Oklahoma. And in Ohio, the crowded primary field for the open Senate seat is becoming a race to be the Trumpiest candidate. Altogether, it is clear that the Republican Party is betting big on Trumpism in 2022. The question now, whether it'll pay off or whether it will scare off independent voters. NBC's Henry Gomez is a national political reporter based in the Midwest. He joins me now from the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio. Henry, it is lovely to see you. You and I have spoken many times in the state of Ohio and across the rest of the country on the campaign trail. So there's no one I'd rather talk to about. Let's start with the critical Ohio Senate race, because it's a pretty good example of how Republicans are falling all over themselves to get in line behind Trump. I know you interviewed J.D. Vance. You talked to Sherrod Brown. Brown's description of what's happening there is pretty evocative. What do you think we need to know right now about what's happening in this race?
I mean, Sherrod Brown, the Democratic senator who's not on the ballot in 2022, he sums it up as, 5 candidates who are basically on the playground or a schoolyard saying Donald Trump likes me better than he likes you. And that really, it's partisan, but it's a distillation of what this GOP primary has become in Ohio. You have 5 announced candidates, all of whom have gone to varying lengths to demonstrate their loyalty to former President Trump, whether it's when they endorsed him, how early they endorsed him, whether they loaned him staff to campaign in 2016, whether they said something nice about him, whether they raised money for him, whether they got a picture taken with him. Like there's no tie that's too small to flaunt in this race if you're a Republican running for the seat.
Pretty remarkable. And when you talk to Vance, he, of course, is the author of Hillbilly Elegy, former venture capitalist, someone who really aggressively criticized Trump. He, of course, said, well, I've got to suck it up and support him if I want to win this race. But you also pressed him on whether Joe Biden was the legitimate nominee and whether there was room in the party for people who believe that Biden legitimately won the election. I thought his answers were pretty interesting.
Vance did not directly answer the question. He basically said, I'm just asking questions, and there are irregularities that need to be pointed out and we need to ask questions about, and I'm all for getting to the bottom of that, which really sidesteps around the direct question of, do you believe Joe Biden is a legitimate president? And, actually, that's a milder approach than some of the other candidates in this race have taken. Josh Mandel, the former state treasurer, Jane Timken, the former state party chair, have both basically said there was election fraud on the level that it deprived Trump from winning. And of course, these are things that are not true or cannot be substantiated. And Vance has, rather than tell the truth and say that, Joe Biden won, Donald Trump lost, he's sort of nibbling around the edges with his answer. And I think that's what some Republicans who aren't really willing to fully commit to the lie are trying to do. They're trying to circle a square there. And it's interesting to hear, you have to listen really closely to the answers to find out what they're saying and what they're not saying.
It's true. Henry, big picture here. We obviously, heading into the midterms, the Senate is going to be on the line for sure. It's 50-50. But there does seem to be a little bit more confidence among Democrats that they're going to be able to figure out a way to hang on to the chamber. It's really the House where things are going to potentially get really dicey. And that, of course, has to do with redistricting. But there are also questions about the messaging and how each party is positioning itself, what they're doing in Congress, and also what President Joe Biden is doing. And I'm just curious, your sense, there are a lot of districts across the Midwest where, we talked a lot heading into 2020 about the blue wall that the president needed to rebuild across the Midwest. And he did it, and it gave him the White House, along with, of course, the wins in Georgia and other places that are turning blue. But I'm curious your sense of where things stand right now in some of those really tricky House races. What are you hearing from voters that you talk to about things like policing and crime and voting rights, and whether or not they believe or are buying into Republican arguments that Democrats are going too far, or whether they don't like all of the Trumpism that we just outlined?
Well, there's a combination of that, and it's hard to put any voter, especially in the Midwest, into one box. I mean, when you have a message that says explicit as defund the police, it takes a couple of conversations at least to explain to a voter what that means and what that doesn't mean. And so when you get into more of the nuances of things, you can have a conversation with these voters, maybe have an interesting debate, but what they're getting are, headlines and, a couple snippets here and there, especially in these TV ads. What I'll tell you both parties are really worried about or watching going into 2022, especially with redistricting, is how these suburbs are carved out, what districts they go in, how that affects the makeup of the map, because the suburbs were big for Biden in 2020, and Democrats hope they are again in 2022.
Right. All right. Henry Gomez, thank you very much for your reporting today. We really appreciate it. It's great to see you.